Next up, the market value of agricultural land in Nebraska increased by 3% over the prior year to an average of $2,730 per acre. That's according to the 2020 Nebraska Farm Real Estate Market Survey. UNL's Department of Ag Economics has released this year's preliminary findings tracking overall land values as well as cash rental rates. Nebraska Extension educator Jim Jansen is one of the survey's authors and stopped by to talk about the most recent data.
So annually, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Department of Agricultural Economics conducts a survey of land industry professionals across the state of Nebraska. This includes farm and ranch managers, agricultural appraisers, as well as agricultural bankers. Jeff Stokes here on campus, along with myself, annually conduct this for the last several years. And as part of this survey, we took a look at current land values, the current market value of land, in addition to cash rental rates for the entire state of Nebraska.
And of course, annual report. So give us a quick reminder of what we saw in last year's report and if we're seeing more of the same this time around.
So on the topic of land values, we've seen land values peak roughly in 2014 and they declined through 2019. Our current report is the first time in 5 years that we've seen a slight increase. And when I say slight, I'm referring to about a 3% increase in the market value of land across the state of Nebraska. There are areas where it's up slightly more, it's down slightly more, but when you take into account all the different types of land that we track, we are estimating the market value up. And some folks might look at this as more of just a steady market, but it is a change from what we've seen in the past, where we've seen a gradual decline over the last 5 years that had accounted for roughly a 20% decline in the market value, followed by a slight increase. Land values are important to many operators, as this is a source of equity, a store of wealth for them, a store of wealth that they can use for financing of long-term or short-term debt. So we're always very interested as a public, the stakeholders across Nebraska are always very interested in this topic.
What would you say are a couple reasons for these increases?
So based on the survey panel members or the survey participants that take our survey, several features were noted. One, still is a strong demand in the farm real estate market for purchases. Two, a very limited supply of quality land, or land in general. And three, various kinds of disaster payments that were made to help deal with issues related to trade or the prevent plant that we had issues with. Related to those disaster payments, the marketing facilitation payments at the time when the report was wrote, we estimated that about $690 million has been paid out to help offset the trade retaliation that was undue trade influences or conflicts because of the tariffs. So these financial things that got paid out to operators help offset some of the lower commodity prices or losses we may have had. And it was kind of like an injection into the ag economy that helped at least stabilize or hold things maybe steady. Mm-hmm. Still a lot of uncertainty relating into 2020 for the next upcoming year, but for the time being, when we estimated the market value and cash rental rates, we estimated them steady to slightly up.
And as we dig a little deeper, what are we seeing in dry land values and irrigated land values?
Yeah, so dry land and irrigated land values make up about half the state. And once again, we've seen a little bit higher increase under the dry land cropland estimates than the irrigated. Land values in the Northwest as well as the Southwest were a little bit softer in terms of their market values. In the Northwest, survey participants noted uncertainty related to some of the specialty crop production in the area. That definitely has an influence on the cash rental rates that are paid for the irrigated cropland in that area as part of the rotation of those specialty crops. And in the Southwest, there's always a challenge of addressing limited water supplies for irrigation purposes and the outlook on what regulations or policies may be put in place in the future guiding the use of that water in those areas.
And of course, we can't forget our cattle producers. What are we seeing for land values in terms of grazing and hay?
Yeah, so grazing and hayland were up just slightly more than cropland, talking around 4 to 5%. Many folks know that the current prices for livestock with challenges we're facing in the news on various aspects of what's happening to trade, and that have definitely influenced cattle or livestock prices. But we did see a fairly strong market with respects to the grazing land or the hayland, the land classes that really serve the cow-calf industry in the state of Nebraska.
What are some of the other concerns from landowners that were addressed in this report?
Property owners, whether they're a current operator or maybe a retired landowner or an absentee landowner, the current land ownership expenses were the biggest concern noted, and that would probably be noted as property taxes. Current property tax levels, future property tax policies. It's an issue we're actively debating at the unicameral this session on trying to provide some relief and balancing that with other state outlays. But that was one of the biggest concerns. And also the issues related to flooding in the last year. The state had a wide array of conflicts in certain areas where it seemed to be more okay. Certain landowners are still trying to address how do we account for those things.
And Jim, as far as cash rents, what can you tell us?
Related to cash rents in the state of Nebraska, we're seeing, we follow irrigated, dry land, and grazing land. And the cash rents appear to be fairly steady to slightly up depending on where you're at in the state. There are certain areas such as the Panhandle or Southwest where we've seen some slight declines, but it appears that cash rents in the state of Nebraska appear to be fairly stable. And some of those disaster payments, as well as crop insurance indemnities for prevented plant cropland, may have softened the blow that operators seen in their finances, or maybe stabilized their finances, and might be one reason why we're still seeing that competitive nature for cash rents to be fairly steady to even slightly up in certain areas.